time. They bring it and they make me cry. So this morning, my title is Building Trust is an Inside Job. How does that feel? Right? And this series is Trust is Underneath It All. And I want to share with you guys how I came to this topic. As y'all know, last week at the annual meeting, I talked about what mine to do spiritually is to help this community and myself, because it's always me as well doing the work, grow in our prosperity consciousness and also grow in our prayer consciousness, because those are one and the same. And so I generally set out all of my topics for the year back in like fall. So like this fall I'll be doing next year. So I had a topic and it was like, it didn't speak to me. It's just like, yeah, it didn't speak to me. And I thought, so what is it that's coming up? And I said, well, if we're going to work on prosperity in September, which I've said to y'all, we're going to have a class on prosperity, and I'll be teaching it with my sister Chris and Reverend Vita. And we're going to look at foundational texts that Unity writers wrote. What was one of them? Oh, Catherine Ponder, I know, yeah. And I'm going to work on Charles Fillmore, and Vita's going to work on Eric Butterworth. So if you come, you'll get a sense of each of these authors and what they say about prosperity. So I said, what is underneath prosperity? What do you need to know or embody, practice to get to prosperity? What's that linchpin? So I said, well, faith, right? You need faith. And then what's underneath faith? And I thought, trust. Oh. Trust. That's a big one, right? It's complicated. It's complicated. So this morning I want to start off the new series on trust. And throughout the month of August, I'm going to look at trust in self, which will start today, trust in God, trust in others, and trust in life. So just breathe that in. And just see, where are you with trust? What comes up for you? I sent a text to one of my sisters, and perhaps she's watching this morning. She's like, what are you going to talk about? I said, trust. She's like, I have trust issues. Sorry, Emma. Just told everybody your business. And I said, well, of course you do. Look at how we were raised. Right? That's really the biggest piece. Trust is essential. It's honestly essential for a civilization to work. It's dependent on us trusting one another. I know there was one time I was with my spouse and we were driving down we were going to walk and people were driving. And think about that. When you walk in front of a car, you trust. You trust they're not going to run you over, right? You trust. Or when you're sitting in a dentist chair, as I did this past week, you trust they're going to do what they say they're going to do, right? You trust. So it's absolutely essential. And yet, where is our relationship, or what relationship do we have to trust? Or how do we even define trust? Did we take our family of origins definitions and we're living those out? Or have we looked at our own definition and living that out? So that's what I want us to do this morning, is just really just ground ourselves in this idea of trust. And so I'm going to share my story of trust, where I am with trust, where I have been and where that's led me. And then I want to share what Iyanla Vanzant says about trust. And this is based on Iyanla Vanzant, if y'all heard of her. Yeah, her book, Trust, Mastering the Four Essential Trusts. So I want to look and see what she says about self-trust and give some of the practical tools so that you can start on your self-trust. And then last, we're going to end with a body prayer. So thanks for beginning us with a body prayer. We're going to do a Julian of Norwich body prayer. She was a Christian mystic in the 14th century. So why don't we, as I said to you, look at your relationship to trust. And as you look at your relationship to trust, I want you to take on an affirmation because every Sunday we have an affirmation. So the affirmation is, I trust myself with myself. That's the affirmation. And the first M, so that you know, is lowercase. And the second M is, guess what? Capital. Why is it capital? It's the God self. So let that be with you. I trust myself with myself. And breathe that in. I trust myself with myself. Let that move through your body, through your mind. And then one last time. I trust myself with myself. And let that be your practice this week. Let it be your practice this month. And if you forget it, all you have to do is get the app, right? Get the app, and it's right there. Everything I'm going to say today is right there, condensed version, so you'll have a practice. So I said I would start with my relationship to trust and my relationship to trust in self. So I have to start with my family of origin story because that's where I've learned trust. And I was raised with a daddy whom I adore, and he made his transition when I was 26, and I still adore him. And my daddy did not trust anyone. Yeah, I look at my sister, she's like, nope. And so that's what he taught us. You don't trust anybody. I don't even remember exactly his words, but that was it. You just don't trust. You probably remember his words. Don't trust anybody. Don't trust anybody. You're not supposed to trust anybody. That was his word. It was more like a mantra for him. It was a way of life, and it was a mantra. And for me, I would hear it and think, okay, that's terrible. And I was a child. I was like, who would want to live like that? Like, that didn't feel right for me. It didn't resonate with me. So that wasn't who I was. And you'll ask my sister, I'm incredibly trusting. I'm very trusting of people. However, there's a however there, and it's coming. However, and it's coming. The however always comes, right? So then my mom was trusting of people, really for the most part. But my mom always lived with a lot of fear. Always. She was always really fearful. And I have talked about my fears and how I pretty much inherited that and anxiety. And so to understand why she was so fearful, you have to know her mom. My abuelita, Petra, was a very willful woman, incredibly willful. And she was very controlling because she was very scared of something happening to her daughters. And so she clearly, when you're in fear, you're not trusting, right? You're not trusting. So that's where that fear showed up. And my mom had a lot of fear. And then I had a conversation with my maternal Thea, who has since made her transition. I was very close to her, and she gave me so much information that just helped me like put pieces together. And one of the things she once said to me is, Abuelita didn't trust us, her daughters, that she was very hard on them. And I said, I know. And I said, why? She's like, she would say, how can I trust you when I don't trust myself? How can I trust you when I don't trust myself? And then all of the pieces fell together for me because it has taken me a long time to trust myself. It has been a journey. And the way that has shown up is I once shared with you guys, I was in a relationship that was not for my highest and best. I've shared that. And it was a relationship where it was just emotionally and psychologically abusive. That's just the honest piece of it. And of course, I participated in that as well. I've come to realize, right? When you do your work, you realize that. And I was on a yoga mat, and the teacher, I've told y'all this part of the story, the teacher said, what's the essence? Remember I've told y'all that? What is the essence? And I immediately just knew love, right? That's the only thing that keeps us together is love. And I knew that was it, and that's what I wanted to be, and I knew I wasn't practicing it. So I went home and I ended that relationship. And a couple of months later, I was just on my knees crying. I was on my knees crying because here's what finally hit me is, how am I going to trust myself? How can I trust myself? I got into a relationship that was not healthy for me, was not for my highest and best. So how am I going to trust myself? Right? Some of you do y'all recognize that? Does that feel true? How can I trust myself? And so here's what I did, because here's the thing, y'all know, when you are down on your knees, you are your most teachable, right? You are your most open to wisdom, because what you want to do is you want to learn. What you want to do is you want to move, you want to grow. You don't want to be in that place again. You don't want to be in that position again, right? So you do the work. And the way I started doing the work is I started watching this show called Starting Over. Has anybody heard about it? Iyanla Vanzant was on it, and she had a couple of other counselors on this show, and it was on every day, and I don't even know what channel it was on, but it was called Starting Over, and it was these women it was kind of like a reality show, but it wasn't all the nastiness of a reality show. They were just trying to start over in their lives. They had found themselves in really difficult situations. So Iyanla Vanzant was there giving them wisdom. So I would sit in front of the TV every day watching the show with a journal, and I pretended like Iyanla Vanzant was mine, giving me wisdom. I know, right? I look back now and I think, oh my God, that's hysterical. But again, when you want to grow, when you want to transform, when you want wisdom, you will take it where you get it, right? And so then I started reading her books, and of course started seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist and, right? because that's the work, right? We do the emotional work, and why do we do the emotional work? We do the emotional work because then it makes more room we have more spaciousness. We have more to give to ourselves, to give others. We have more love. We have more room for God, right? That's why we do the emotional work, because then we're not dragged down by the stories. So I didn't trust myself. So let's look and see what Iyanla Vanzant says about trust. I love her definition. And she says, trust is a way of thinking, being, and living that grows from experience, desire, and choice. It is a demonstration of hope, courage, and perseverance that moves the mind, heart, and body beyond what is known into the realm of what is possible. That's a lot, right? That's a big... Did y'all know that about trust? Do you know that's what trust was? Yeah. Say it again. I'm going to. Yeah. I'm going to say it again. It's a lot. I'm going to say it again, and then I'm going to break it down. How's that? Trust is a way of thinking, being, and living that grows from experience, desire, and choice. It is a demonstration of hope, courage, and perseverance that moves the mind, heart, and body beyond what is known into the realm of what is possible. That's a big definition. Again, it's in the app, in the sermon notes. So, in other words, here's what I say: trust is underneath it all, right? Trust is underneath it all. It is a deep spiritual practice. It's a spiritual practice, right? It's an emotional practice, but also a spiritual practice. It's a practice. What did I write here? I wrote something that I'm sure is going to help us all. It's the practice we do to demonstrate, right? That is always what Truth, our co-founders, they were Truth students. Why? For them, that meant they were demonstrating. They were demonstrating good. They were demonstrating love. They were demonstrating God, knowing it was already in them to demonstrate. Does that make sense? But we are those vehicles, just like Charles Fillmore said, we are the proper, he said it crazy, proper formative vehicles. That's what we are, the proper formative vehicles. So we have to be open to the trust, be open to it, to demonstrate it. And we demonstrate it for ourselves. And what we know is when you trust that highest outcomes are always going to come, right? Amen. You trust. It's already there. It's always been there. It's us shifting to it, because it's already there. So that's what trust is. And did I mention she's a New Thought minister? She's a New Thought minister. She was ordained in Center for Spiritual Living, which is one of our sister movements, really and truly. So that's what she says about trust. And then what gets in the way of this thinking, this life, this way of being? What gets in the way of that? Fear. Ego. Family of origin stories that we were told, right? So she leans on psychologists, and what she says that by the time a child is 1 year old, they will have a sense of trust or distrust. That's huge, right? By the time they're 1. Because think about it. They come in trusting. They have to. They have to trust. A baby has to trust that it's going to be fed, and it cries, and you feed it. So that creates a trust. It goes to the bathroom and changes its diaper. That trust is there. Or one of the things, the games I love that children play is they drop the ball, right? And you pick it up for them, and they drop it. You pick it up, they drop it. That's their way of playing trust. Can I trust you're going to give me that ball back? That's what that practice is. And, you might get irritated, but it's like, do that with them. If you have a kid, do it with them. So here's what she also says. If as children we live among abrupt noises and angry voices, even when they were not directed toward us, we begin to perceive people in the world as dangerous. Even if it wasn't directed at you, the world is dangerous. So I want you to breathe, right? Just be with that. Just breathe. Just take a breath. Take a breath, because some of you, or even me, things come up, right? I remember angry voices, even if it wasn't directed at me. And I know it stays in the body. It just does, right? So let us take a breath with it and let us know that in this moment we are safe and we're in the loving arms of the one and one another. So as we do this trust work, things will come up. It will come up as we do the trust work. And the good thing about it coming up is, guess what? We get to do the healing, right? Because if you don't allow yourself to feel it, you're not going to heal it. So we allow ourselves to feel it. We allow ourselves to do the healing work. So trust is an essential need. And the thing about it is, if the inner child or the child did not feel trust or no trust, or didn't know that the world was trustworthy or a trusting place, that inner child is still going to be seeking out attention, right? It's still going to be seeking out that attention of wanting perhaps justice because they were in a home that was not healthy for them and not safe. So they'll want a justice, or they're seeking out acceptance or love or understanding. Why? Because it didn't get it. So that's the idea of the inner child. But if the inner child was entrusted with care, they'll feel safe. They'll feel satisfied. They'll feel secure. They'll feel loved and cared for and nourished. And so that is what my hope is that as we work on trust, we know that the divine is within us, helping us move to that place if we have issues with trusting ourselves. If we don't value ourselves or feel our worth, we're not trusting ourselves, right? If when somebody criticizes us, blames us, or judges us and we fall apart, right? It's us not trusting ourselves and knowing, you know what? That's okay. That's your opinion. You can have that. I know I can trust myself with myself. That's the practice. So she offers 3 practical steps, and I want to share those with you. She says to stand in your truth. When you trust yourself, you know that you will make mistakes and you will be okay. Amen. Right? Mistakes are just how we learn. They're necessary. We don't grow if we don't make them. You also know that if you make a mistake, or even if you don't make a mistake, others will more than likely disagree with you. Have you noticed that? People are going to disagree with you, whether you make a mistake or not. And guess what? It's okay. It doesn't change your trust for yourself. You can stand in the face of criticism, judgment, and blame without falling apart. That's huge. You can stand in the face of criticism, judgment, and blame without falling apart. That's a big one, right? Because you trust yourself with yourself. So then she says, speak your truth. That means speaking from your heart, telling the truth as you understand it about the experience you are having right now in the present moment. And here's the thing about the standing in the truth and the speaking the truth. You don't even have to practice this with others right now, but you can practice it with yourself. Am I standing in my truth? Am I speaking my truth? Am I being honest with myself about how I feel in this one moment? And then when you start speaking with others, if they're telling a truth, which you're like, what? That's not the truth, right? You know it's not the truth. You're like, you know what? That's how they understand it right now. And I'll let them understand it however they understand it right now, because here's how I understand mine right now. Does that make sense? That's the speaking the truth. And then last, and this should not be surprising to any of y'all, be courageously vulnerable. That's big, right? Be courageously vulnerable. And as you know, when you speak from your heart, it's always a practice in vulnerability. It's always a practice. But the thing about it, when you have befriended those feelings, when you're able to share it, it's because you've befriended it. You're okay with it. You're okay with all parts of yourself. It's like Shara's song, what she said. Let me befriend the unworthiness. Let me befriend the loneliness. Let me befriend all of it. That's the vulnerability, right? It's that feeling of we all are wired, and this is always what Brene Brown says, we're all wired for belonging. We all want to know we're worthy. We're all wired for belonging. But then we don't come together because it's like, but oh wow, if you knew me, right? If you knew my thoughts, if you knew me, you're not going to love me. But the thing is then when we give ourselves that space to be vulnerable, others will do it well as well. And then we're creating trust. Isn't that beautiful? We're creating it together. So I trust myself with myself. I trust myself with myself. So I want to end with Julian Norch's body prayer. It engages our mind, our body, our heart. She was a 14th century Christian mystic. And what she said is the fruit and the purpose of prayer is to be one with God. To be one with God, something we already know we are, right? To be one with God. And she had 4 steps. And I'm going to go over that with you. The 4 steps were, the first one is await. Await. Then allow, accept, and attend. And what I feel about this prayer is that sometimes if we don't trust our bodies, we don't trust this space, that's what that prayer does. I know that I used this prayer when I was doing a 24-hour meditation. And it was a prayer that helped me just move my body so that I could know my oneness with my body. So if you want to do it with me, we start with a wait. And you wait and you put your hands out. Your cupped hands out. And what are you awaiting for? What are you awaiting for? God's presence, however it comes to you. However it comes to you, God's presence. And now you move your arms upward and you allow God's presence. You just allow it. However it shows up, you allow it. No judgment, just allow. And then you put your hands to your heart and you accept it. You accept it with the very being that you are, that presence, that energy that's everywhere present, and that energy that is within you. And then you extend your arms out and you attend. You attend to that. You attend to that love. You practice being that love, being that presence. Whatever is calling to you, you attend. So we'll do it one more time. That way you have it. It's in the app, but this way we'll do it. So you await, you allow, you accept, you attend. I have to do it one more time because it's so beautiful. Await, allow, accept, attend. Now this time without words, both of us doing it in the silence, okay? Amen.